Wow, guys, it's actually been a while. I'm actually able to make videos again. My work seems to be stabilizing. I'm actually able to sit down and actually make videos. I've actually made a lot of videos prior to this, but I haven't been able to finish the editing. Basically because I've been too busy. There just wasn't any time, and then there was too many sound artifacts. I needed to do a lot of recording, just impossible. But at the current moment, it seems like everything is fine. It's stabilized, and then I can get back to this. My original talk for these last few weeks has been about the SNES Classic. I made an original rant about how difficult it was to get it on August 22nd, how Nintendo shouldn't have made it so difficult. I've also was I also made a video praising Nintendo, especially Reggie for making that announcement where he says like the SNES Classic was gonna be available until 2018, but also that they're gonna re-release the system and that you shouldn't buy it from scalpers. The reason why I was so excited about this announcement was because I've been saying for months that Nintendo should really say something about the scalpers so that people don't actually go out and buy these consoles, simply for the fact that if people keep buying these consoles, these scalpers are just gonna increase the price, and then people are gonna get less of these systems because more scalpers will see a good idea that it would be a good idea to invest in these systems just to resell them for the high value. But if many people don't buy them, usually these systems won't go for too much money. If you see a system, for instance, on eBay and it's like $140, I would say, these systems with taxes usually come out around $95 for some people. And when you try to resell that on eBay, eBay takes like a fraction of that, and then also shipping takes a fraction of that if you make it free shipping or something else. But even then, just that one fraction that eBay takes is so substantial that there's a chance that scalper will not make much money, if any money at all. Because let's face it, if you're standing in line for freaking hours trying to get your hands on this system and you can only sell it for like $10, it wasn't really worth it in the end. You just get a job. But the thing is, like, most scalpers don't really realize how difficult it is to sell these consoles, especially to make a profit. You really have to go out of your way. And everything, basically it's like that. I remember one time I tried to sell or resell a PlayStation 4 when I got it on launch and I was leaving the country, so I couldn't take it with me, and I was like, I'm gonna sell on eBay. I was hoping not to get a loss. Like, I was really hoping not to get a loss, so I listed it for what I paid for the console, which was like $550. No one wanted to pay that much for the price. And even then, if they bought it for that price, I would have lost like $25 on eBay fees, and everyone was like calling me like this scammer, this cheat or something, and I wasn't. Like, I was paying, that's what I paid for the console. Like, I had insane taxes. I was living in California at the time, and then everything else, like, I actually had to take a trip to a different state, and I didn't even add that to the price. Like, I paid tons just to get my PlayStation 4 when I got it, but I just couldn't play with it, and I thought someone else would be happy with it, so I listed it, and everyone wanted me to list it for like $400, and I just thought that was just crazy because that's not what I paid. No one pays $400 for a console. So the thing that you have to realize with these people is that chances are they're making a big mistake, because they're trying, especially if Nintendo goes out of their way and tells you not to get them because it decreases the prices to the point where you're just making a mistake if you try to scalp it, which is good for the people because you'll see less scalpers out there trying to sell these systems, and then that means more systems for people. Like, some people might want 2 systems or maybe just 1 for themselves. I can understand 2, maybe if you want to keep 1, sealed up or whatever. Even then, that's a little bit, you probably shouldn't do it, but I can understand why you would want to do it. But even if you do it, there should be enough consoles for everyone to get them if the scalpers weren't going out of their ways to scalp it. But anyways, the scalping number this time around I think is much smaller than what it was for the SNES Classic, simply because there's more of these consoles available. On top of that, it seems like people don't want to necessarily scalp these. There's not as much money to make as there was for the SNES Classic because it was so hard to get. But at the current moment, these things were selling like originally for like $300 on eBay. It was insane. So like, I can understand why people wanted to sell them, but still, like, if people really don't buy from scalpers, I think it's a good thing. Even though it might just be like 5% of people doing it. I don't know what the number is. I'm pretty sure it's higher than that. It was originally, I think, especially for the SNES Classic. I know people say it was a small number, but I feel like it was a much larger number than that were just scalping these systems. But anyways, that was really good news that Nintendo went out of their way they denounced these scalpers, and then moving on, the next exciting thing Reggie did say was that these consoles were going to be available to 2018. Hopefully that means that these things will be available all throughout 2018 and not just like January 2018 like the NES Classic, because they said the same thing, that the NES Classic was going to be available all through 2017, but they basically just meant till January. But I mean, yeah, it was available till I think May. But even then, that's not enough. Especially if they don't make enough, it's just not enough of those consoles, and people really want them. So it's kind of sucks. So hopefully Nintendo pulls through this time, and I have a good feeling about them. Like they're literally like whatever they're doing, they're this change of management or whatever that's recently come by. They seem to be improving a whole lot on their whole image. So I can see why their stock's finally starting to increase again and all this other stuff, because they're doing a really good job. So I hope they're not just like lying to us like they've done a zillion times already within the last few years, where they tell us like, I mean, even for the NES Classic, Reggie said it was going to be easier to get, and then eventually they were like, oh no, it's gone and you can't get it. I'm sorry. They didn't even apologize. I mean, but the thing is, like, it sucks that you weren't able to get it, and it really, like, if I couldn't get the SNES Classic, I would have been. I would be devastated, and then I would really lose my faith in Nintendo. I would not buy, like, I'm currently not buying any other Switch games until I get my SNES Classic, because, like, I don't know if to support the company going forward. I'm still a little bit iffy whether or not they're lying on to me or not. So that's the thing, like, if you can't trust a company, eventually people will walk away. People like me, I know some people won't. Some people will actually try their best to, because they still love the company and they'll still support them. But personally, this is the thing that just cuts it for me. Like, the SNES for me means a lot. So if they can't produce enough, and they're just, like, again, lying to us and not making enough, and it's so limited and basically no one gets their hands on it, it's basically the end for me. I can't keep supporting a company that keeps playing with my emotions so much. Basically, it's just a personal thing. It could be different for other people. I mean, I can see how other people would not feel the same way as I do. But for me, it's just again too much and too frequent from the same company that just I can't. I'm just gonna walk away for a few years. If the management were to change immensely, I would be more happy to come back. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of Reggie. I feel like ever since he took over, Nintendo's only gone downhill for me, because I used to love Nintendo right before that, but like around the time Reggie took over and when the Wii and all this stuff started happening with Nintendo, I kind of got more distance from them. I still like prefer them over every other video game company there is, but still the love wasn't as strong as it used to be. And even today, like, from all this all their management wise and how it's been going, I'm kind of drifting more and more away from them. But it seems like good things are on the horizon. Specifically, what Reggie's announcement was just a few weeks ago. I'm sorry, like, that video didn't go up, but I want to talk about it still now. Basically, since he said they're basically promising that there's going to be more of these consoles available. And basically, they're saying that people can get these consoles for the retail price. So, like, that's what I'm hoping for. If they pull through and they meet demand, and everyone that really wanted one can get it, and they'll be happy, then I will totally support Nintendo going forward. But for now, I'm pretty much holding off on everything. Like, I mean, I'm not buying necessarily Super Mario Odyssey as much as I wanted to, simply just as a minor protest for like, I really want the SNES Classic kind of thing. And I know it might be stupid, but like, I mean, that game looks great, but it's not what I grew up with, and not the reason why I love Nintendo. It's a completely new version of Nintendo, so like, I can maybe do without it. Like, I've supported Nintendo so much within the last 10 years. I've missed out on basically all PlayStation, a lot of the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 era. Like, I got to actually miss out on them because I just had basically a Wii for like the longest of times. I mean, originally I had an Xbox 360, but for some reason around 2007 I only had a Wii, or 2008. I mean, I only had a Wii going forward, and then I haven't really, and I moved a lot, so all I've had recently was the Wii U, and that's all I've played. So even then, I still really didn't play for the PlayStation 4 or the Xbox One, which I will do soon. Like I'm planning to rebuy that console and play all those games and see what I've missed out on. But I've been extremely busy and I haven't been able to do it. So that's a different thing for a different channel at the moment. But anyways, the other great thing and the most spectacular, amazing thing that Reggie did in that announcement that he gave a few weeks ago was like he actually said that they're gonna bring back the NES Classic in 2018, the summer of 2018, and that's really exciting news. So many people didn't get to get that console, and that was one of the reasons why I started to just not trust Nintendo completely. That them bringing it back kind of makes me trust them a little bit more now, especially if they make enough of them that like you can go to a store and just pick it up. Like that's what I'm hoping they do with the SNES Classic. I hope they keep producing them all through 2018, so that when you walk into a store, you might see one. Like you can do that now with the Switch. Every once in a while, if you walk into the store, you'll see a few of them just lying there. Yeah, they sell out still, but even now as I speak, I see some in Amazon, and a bunch of other stores. They have them, so like it's not even, it's to the point where it's not that difficult to get. So if in a few months the SNES Classic is this at least this easy to get, then I'll be satisfied with Nintendo. Like even if it sells out still, the fact that you have like at least a few hours to actually, make your purchase and stuff, like that means a lot. Like you even have a few days sometimes. Like that is perfect, because like that's like how when the Wii was hard to get, like at least you still had, like, if you found a bunch of supply online, you still had like a day or two to buy them before they would sell out. But with the way that the SNES Classic is selling out, you have to basically win the lottery in order to actually be able to buy one. It's just too insane. Like I know it's because people really want this, but I mean Nintendo has to have known people wanted this. Like it's without a doubt, it is what people want. Like I could have told you that if they release this thing, people were gonna basically kill for it. Like it's a part of a lot of people's childhoods. They want to share it with other people, and on top of that, it's really hard nowadays to play a Super Nintendo on a regular TV. Like I've done it, I still do it, but it's not, with like getting the games and everything. It's not that easy as much as it used to be, unless you have a whole setup. But especially if you have a family and stuff, it doesn't go anywhere, and then they become collector's items. So you kind of don't want to mess them up and stuff. So having an actual console re-release like this, even though it has only 21 games, means a lot to a lot of people. So yeah, Nintendo, I just hope for the love of God that they pull through with what they promised and they actually make these things more available. Not just like available how they are now and then be like, oh, that's basically all of it later on in 2018, and basically disappoint still people who haven't been able to get it. Like the craze for these things it's insane. Like the things I remember were like the Furbies in the late 90s, and Tickle Me Elmo as well. Even the N64 was this hard to get. But at least sometime in March, it was still possible to buy that thing. It's just the way it is now. It needs to change. This, I would say. If Nintendo pulls through again, total support. They get all my support, all my love again. I'll buy nothing but Nintendo products all over again, just like I've been doing for a few years, and that's what I'll do. So I'm really hoping Nintendo's learned, and that they're changing and they're improving their image, and they're improving their image with their user base. Because I mean, still with YouTube, they're still doing some really weird things, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. Basically, Nintendo is getting better, but I mean, you can still see some things that aren't good. Like Nintendo recently basically denied streaming for people, and that's kind of looking iffy for me. I mean, yeah, you can do it with another channel, they promised, but at the same time, if you do it, they're just gonna take away your monetization. And that kind of sucks. I just feel like Nintendo still hasn't really catched on. And this is just a thing with all Japanese companies. Like, basically, if Japan ran the tech world, you would see, people still would probably be using Windows XP on their computers. Everything would just be, like, stuck in, like, whatever was the best at one point. And I would say for your OS, it would probably still be running Windows XP since it was so popular. And then classic Japan, like probably around 5 years ago, they would have started making you pay like a monthly fee so that you can get security updates, and that's how they would have like enhanced the system. But other than that, that's how basically Japan runs with all tech. From what I've seen, like it's just my opinion, but basically once they get to a point where isn't just with tech, it's with everything. Once they get to a point where something feels good enough, and they basically cannot envision how they can make it better for some reason, so they just progression just halts completely at that point. That's why if you go to Japan nowadays, I feel like you'll see things like they look like they came out of the 1950s, basically, and like that's just also in cultural ways they handle things, and it's basically because it gets to a point where things are just they work well, so they don't try to fix it or make it better than what it is. It just halts. And then you see this a lot with Nintendo specifically, because they basically the reason why the Wii I say wasn't really more graphically enhanced, and the same thing with the Wii U, was basically because they just got to this point where they feel it's good enough, so why keep improving on it when you know that there's so much more that you can do, but for them it's just good enough, so they're just gonna leave it there. And it kind of sucks. It blows that they keep doing these kinds of things, especially pure Japanese companies, because I would say Sony isn't pure Japanese the ways like Sega itself wasn't pure Japanese either. But Nintendo seems, especially ever since Reggie took over, it feels like it's become way more pure Japanese than what it used to be, and that's why I feel like you'll see huge like problems, especially when they try to implement themselves into the Western market, like they've been doing. But changes have happened with this new, like ever since the Switch came out, and that's looking very promising. Looks like they're listening to their markets a little bit more, but they still haven't gotten there. And the YouTube thing kind of points this out, and that's what makes me kind of iffy about whether or not I should keep supporting Nintendo at the moment, since it seems like they're still stuck somehow with the same old mentality where they should highly protect their IP when what they're doing is not really protecting them, more like they're trying to... The thing they're trying to do, at least the thing I feel they're trying to do, is basically they're holding their IP. They don't want YouTubers to mess around with it because they don't want to give, like, they want an unknown presence providing a voice for their characters, basically. So if there's a YouTuber out there, whoever it would be, like, if they make a video, and they get popular with making Nintendo videos, they get associated with Nintendo products, and then they have a say at Nintendo, basically. And they also have a say in how these characters are portrayed to people, especially younger generations that are into it. And this is what Nintendo, I think, is most worried about, how they're marketing. They have no control of their marketing, so they kind of worry what these kids will do to their IP, how they'll mold it, how they'll change it. But the thing that Nintendo does not understand, though, and this is very important, is that they should embrace it regardless, because if they do, they'll see better sales, and it doesn't really, like, they're still in control massively whether or not they want to change their IP. Yeah, the market will envision it this way, but who cares? That's always going to happen, whether you want it or not. There's a reason why certain IPs of theirs, like Metroid, is more popular in the West than it is popular in Japan, and the reason for this is just because, like, what that whole country envisions that IP to be is different. It has a different value to them. So when you go out there and, like, you sell it, people will be more embracing of that in certain regions compared to the other thing based on what image they have of it. YouTubers help build this image regardless of what Nintendo wants it to be. It doesn't really matter in the end, because they're making more popular, they'll sell it more, and then eventually this thing will it'll get a life of its own. They're worried about that. They're worried that their IP gets a life of their own, and it becomes something else that they don't have control over, and then they have to mold this thing into what those people want. And that's not the case. They still have control to release it however they want to do it. They just need to get more strength and just agree that they want to do it their own way, regardless of what these people want in the end. Yes, they should listen to them, in my opinion. They still should listen to them. They don't have to, is my point. But they're so afraid of this, and this is one of the problems I feel Nintendo has to this point. Like, they really need to listen more still, and until they do, I feel it's a little bit untrustworthy of, like, to keep supporting the company as it is now. Until they change their ways entirely, it would be much. I would feel safer with it. But still, I mean, it's their choice in the end. Still, like, but I really hope they start to learn. And it seems they are. They seem to be opening up. But once they change this mentality that I would say is stuck in the past, and they embrace it, Nintendo will be far greater of a company. Like if Nintendo allowed YouTube videos, like people to just make random YouTube videos, I think YouTube would be just 90% Nintendo stuff. And you know what effect that would have on Nintendo? Nintendo would be again the biggest company, video game company out there. It'll just all be Nintendo. Like how Minecraft is exploded, you can just imagine how Nintendo would have. Like all kids would know Nintendo. Nowadays, when I ask a kid about something, they still talk about PlayStation. It's really rare when I hear Nintendo. It's starting to pick up now with the Switch, but like that, the Switch would be even more massive. I feel like if they allowed YouTubers to show footage of it on. And the reason I say this is because like one of the reasons I wasn't gonna buy Super Mario 3D Worlds for the Wii U. I just wasn't gonna buy it because I didn't think it was a real Mario game. But I saw a YouTuber playing it, and I just got so intrigued by the game that I actually went out and bought it that same day. Can you imagine like how many sales Nintendo just gives up by not allowing more people to post things without interference? Like it has to be massive. Like and like I say, like if YouTube was 90% Nintendo, like it kind of is now when you click on it, but it's only just in images. But if it was like game footage as well, like it would be so much in your mind that all you would buy is Nintendo stuff. Like I would love another one of the things that I feel is missing nowadays is like that during the SNES era there was like a huge Nintendo culture. Like when you thought video games, it was just Nintendo and it was awesome. It's the same thing with like Saturday morning cartoons, but with game consoles. It was such a great culture that it was amazing, and this culture could be revived with them allowing YouTubers to just post away, because like it would bring this culture, and they don't have to do anything. They just need to maybe even point the culture in some direction, like constantly make their own YouTube channels and bring up like events and stuff on that YouTube platform constantly. Like, hey guys, we're making this contest. Whoever makes this great video, we'll post it here, and like we'll have this game show or whatever. People will watch it like insanely, and then this culture would be built. But they don't do that. Nintendo doesn't not do that. They completely refuse to embrace it. Another example of like failing to embrace the future is like Nico Nico here, like the YouTube of Japan. If you go on that site, you already have your answer. What how Japanese corporations think of technology. That site's stuck in like the 90s or early 2000s. It's terrible for the regular user. I see why people use it, but it is not a good site to like. If you weren't living in Japan, you would never visit that site. Like even then, if you know about better technology, you would not visit that site. I feel, especially not pay for it, which is the insanity thing. Like seriously, tech companies or just the culture in Japan needs to learn how to embrace other things like the future overall, and Nintendo really needs to learn this. Until they don't, I feel like the company itself isn't really. It's not really stable, especially if I was like putting my money like in stocks in Nintendo. I wouldn't. It'd just be really iffy. It's like such a temp company until they start to embrace the modern culture. By embrace, I don't mean do what every other company does, and by no means would that be a good idea. But by embrace is to actually, understand that the world constantly changes, adapt to new things, or choose not to adapt to new things, but choose to acknowledge that they exist at least. Whereas Nintendo, I feel, fails to do this, and they fail to understand what it is. Yeah, you can say they embraced YouTube when they created their YouTube program, but they didn't, in a sense. And that's just a way to limit the idea. If they were to embrace it, they would have created a whole new platform or something where you could do it the same things at least. If they wanted to protect it, but then again, not by taking people's money or anything like that. At least the most that you should take is whatever YouTube takes and nothing else. But they don't do that either. So like, in my opinion, they're not embracing it. they're completely trying to limit it, and then that's not a good thing. But then again, I'm just basically saying what my opinion is in this. Like, your opinion might differ, but honestly, I think the future for Nintendo is looking bright. I think they need to change much more quickly, though, and I hope for everyone's sake that they make the SNES Classic available for everyone. I see Nintendo going very well in a very good direction nowadays. Like there's nothing bad I can say about the Switch. There used to, like, when they made that first announcement with it, where they just focus on the Joy-Cons, that may have been a mistake, but at the same time, they barely use them, and they use them in such a good way in games that, like, I have no complaints whatsoever. That thing needs to be there. But the Switch's greatest thing is that it's basically a portable console with, like, near PlayStation 4 level graphics, and that's just perfect. Like, the graphical abilities of the system is on par, I would say, with anything released nowadays. It's not in the past like other consoles used to be. There's a reason why the graphics aren't as good. Whereas with the Wii, there was no reason. Like, the only reason was maybe price, but that's not good enough. Like, I would have paid $50 or even up to $100 more for the original Wii. If it could have had PlayStation 3 level graphics, I would have preferred it. But even then, that's just a minor gripe. But I feel it limits the Wii's nostalgia value still. But looking back on it now, there's nothing to complain about because you feel like the system's perfect now. But during that time, it was just really hard to get into some games, and even third-party games would never be as good. So Nintendo, I feel, messed up that time period entirely, but that's just my opinion. I'm really hoping that things in the future are much better, and they're looking perfect. And I hope they keep going down this really good route, especially with their announcement recently. And they don't backtrack, they don't change their position, they don't disappoint. Things will be great for Nintendo. I'm just really hoping, really hoping that they change a little bit. Some of the little things like the YouTube stuff. Like, they really need to modernize, and they need to do it quickly. But again, it's looking really good. And that's everything I have to say, guys. I hope you enjoyed this rant. Subscribe if you want. Anyways, I'm out. Bye.